The palace has always been a place of secrets, but today, something changed. After countless weeks of rumors and unanswered questions, Princess Catherine has made a statement that no one expected. Her words were calm, but filled with deep emotion. What she shared wasn't just sad. It revealed something the royal household wanted to keep hidden. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on this developing story. Some conversations are meant to stay private. This particular meeting took place in a secure room away from journalists and cameras. Only a small group was present, trusted advisors, close family members, and senior officials. But what happened in that room would soon become known far beyond the palace walls. Catherine stood before them, holding a written statement. The tension in the room was heavy. She spoke both as a royal figure and as a parent. What she said about Prince Louis shocked everyone present. She used careful language, never giving too many details, but the sadness in her voice said everything. This wasn't a formal announcement approved by the palace. This was the truth, raw and personal. Within moments, the news began to spread. Major media outlets interrupted their regular programming. News channels around the world rushed to confirm the story. The royal family has always been known for keeping things private, but now one of its most loved members had just broken that tradition. Social media exploded instantly. Messages of support flooded in from every corner of the globe. Hashtags containing Louis's name trended within minutes. But inside the royal circle, the mood was very different. Reports suggest that Princess Anne, known for being strong and composed, appeared deeply affected. Prince William, who had stood beside his wife through so much, left the room immediately and was not seen again that day. Palace staff described an unusual silence spreading through the corridors. One source reportedly said, "We always believed she would do the right thing," but no one was prepared for what it would mean. The most striking part of Catherine's message was not just what she said, it was how she said it. Her final words carried a tone of quiet defiance. "It's time the truth was known." This simple sentence felt like a challenge to royal tradition itself. She had not asked for permission. She had not cleared her statement with the communications team. She had simply decided to speak. And by doing that, she placed herself at the center of a global conversation, and possibly at odds with the very institution she serves. But to truly understand why Catherine's words had such a powerful impact, we need to look back at the signs that appeared long before this moment. Signs that something was changing in Prince Louis's life. It wasn't a sudden crisis that raised concern, it was the silence. As royal events continued and official photos were released, one question kept appearing. Where is Prince Louis? His absence from important occasions sparked quiet conversations in the media. At first it seemed minor, but slowly those conversations grew louder and more serious. It started small. A cancelled appearance here, a missing figure in a photograph there. During a royal holiday celebration, Louis was listed in the official schedule, but he never appeared. Early speculation was dismissed as rumor, but royal observers began to notice a pattern. From seasonal gatherings to public events, Louis was increasingly absent. Then a photograph was released. It was meant to show the Wales family together during a happy occasion. The image looked polished and warm, everything the monarchy wanted to project. Except for one detail, Prince Louis was not in it. Social media users immediately questioned the image. Some believed it had been edited. Digital experts analyzed the photo, pointing out unusual details. The palace quickly issued a brief statement. Prince Louis is spending quieter time at home. But the explanation raised more questions than it answered. What kind of situation keeps a child away from his own family portrait? The public wasn't satisfied. The media began digging deeper. And behind closed doors, tension inside the palace was growing. It wasn't just his absence that concerned people, it was the inconsistencies. Leaked schedules showed that Louis had originally been listed for several events, but those entries were later quietly removed. Staff members close to the family began to express worry. Some said Catherine seemed more withdrawn than usual. Others whispered that she had visited a private medical center multiple times under strict secrecy. The timing matched the dates when Louis was missing from public view. By now, even mainstream outlets had stopped treating the situation lightly. Respected journalists began asking harder questions. Those with long-time palace connections found themselves suddenly blocked from information. Briefings became shorter. Communication became tighter. Yet even as the royal system tried to control the narrative, it was clear something serious was happening behind the scenes. The breaking point came when Catherine was photographed leaving a specialized pediatric facility alone. Her head was down. Security surrounded her vehicle. The palace gave no explanation, but the image said everything. As questions piled up and silence deepened, it wasn't the media or the public that revealed the truth. It was an accidental leak that changed everything. It was never supposed to be seen. But one misplaced file, one mistake in the palace's carefully controlled system, exposed what they had been trying to hide. The file contained a name, a diagnosis, and a connection to the youngest prince. When it was discovered, royal staff moved quickly to contain the damage. But it was too late. The leak didn't come from a reporter. It wasn't released by someone with a hidden agenda. According to palace sources, it was simply a clerical error. A confidential health document was accidentally sent to the wrong person. That person, believing it was routine paperwork, shared it with someone outside the palace. By the time its true contents were realized, it had already reached others who understood its significance. The document mentioned ongoing medical monitoring and response strategies related to Prince Louis. The language was technical and medical in nature. Terms like progressive observation and developmental assessment appeared throughout. The final section discussed communication strategies and controlled messaging, language not usually associated with a child's health. This wasn't just a medical update. This was a plan, and it was never meant to be public. When the leak reached certain media circles, the palace reacted immediately. Phone calls were made throughout the night. Legal warnings were prepared, but the damage had already been done. The journalists who had seen the document didn't need to publish it. They only needed to hint at what it contained, and speculation exploded. The palace responded swiftly. All health-related documents were locked down. Staff members were questioned and reassigned. New security measures were put in place overnight. Access to sensitive files was restricted even for longtime employees. Then an emergency meeting was called. King Charles himself ordered it. Every senior member of the royal household was expected to attend, but one person was notably absent: Catherine. Her absence raised immediate questions. Was it a protest, a refusal to participate, or was it something else, something already unfolding quietly? Some palace insiders claimed Catherine had been growing frustrated with the secrecy for weeks. Others suggested she had known about the leaked document and had not tried to stop its circulation. But what the leak made absolutely clear to the world was this: Prince Louis was not simply dealing with a minor issue. He was the subject of coordinated silence, carefully managed appearances, and a narrative controlled from the highest levels. And the question now wasn't just about his condition. It was about who in the palace still had the courage to tell the truth. But if the leak was an accident, what came next was deliberate. And it came from deep within the royal family itself. Reports suggest voices were raised. Some say Princess Anne left the room visibly emotional. What's certain is that behind closed doors, one of the most loyal royals confronted her brother, the king, over what she called a betrayal of honesty. And at the center of her anger were Prince Louis and the truth being kept from the public. The confrontation was not planned. It wasn't softened by royal manners or protocol. It was intense, immediate, and emotional. Palace staff say it happened just hours after the leaked medical document sent shockwaves through the royal corridors. Princess Anne, long seen as the monarchy's steadiest defender, entered a senior strategy meeting without being invited. But this time she wasn't defending the crown. She was demanding accountability for her nephew. Standing before Charles, she didn't hold back. She reportedly accused him of orchestrating the silence. "You've silenced Catherine," she is said to have declared, "and in doing so, you failed Louis. You failed all of us." Staff present were stunned. Anne's usual composure shattered in real time. She reportedly placed documents on the table, her own copies of the leaked material, and demanded to know who had authorized the cover-up. Charles, caught off guard, allegedly tried to regain control. Sources suggest he responded coldly. "Not everything needs to be known, Anne. Not by them, not by the world." His words, meant to calm the situation, only escalated it. According to a senior aide, Anne's voice trembled as she replied, "And when your people no longer trust you, what then? What's left of your throne if it's built on lies?" The room fell into stunned silence. Advisors exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether to intervene or stay quiet. The moment had crossed from professional to deeply personal. This was a sister confronting a brother she believed had lost his way. Shortly after, Anne left the meeting without saying another word, but the palace buzzed with what had just happened. Her face, streaked with emotion, was seen as she exited through a private corridor. Some say she went directly to Catherine's quarters. Whatever was said behind those doors has never been confirmed, but when Anne emerged, she appeared shaken, yet resolute. The fury was gone. What remained was quiet determination. It didn't take long for word to spread through the royal circle. Anne, always loyal and always discreet, had chosen a side, and the side she chose was truth. Multiple sources later confirmed that she encouraged Catherine to speak. "Do what you must," she reportedly said quietly, "or they'll never let you say it at all." What no one knew was that Catherine was already preparing something final, personal, and irreversible. In a private space, hidden among family mementos, staff would later discover a handwritten letter. One William was never meant to read. The letter had no official markings, no royal seal, just Catherine's handwriting on simple paper, folded carefully as if waiting. It was found by accident during a routine organization of the couple's private rooms at Kensington. The drawer was rarely opened. Its contents were personal and private. At first, staff thought it was an old note, until they read the opening line, "If you found this, then I never had the strength to say it aloud." What followed was a wave of emotion. Catherine poured her heart onto the page, revealing the full reality of Louis's condition, how long she had known, how hard she had fought in private, and how alone she had felt. She wrote about nights spent beside his bed, about second opinions and specialists brought in quietly. She wrote about watching her son struggle while being told to appear happy for the public. She didn't blame William. In fact, she praised him, calling him the pillar we all lean on. But she also revealed his breaking point. According to her letter, William had been falling apart in private. He tried to maintain composure publicly while struggling deeply behind closed doors. She described his sleepless nights, the way he would sit in Louis's room after the boy fell asleep just to be near him. But even William, in all his strength, had deferred to the monarchy system. Staff who read the letter said it wasn't designed to provoke a reaction. It wasn't a plea for help. It was an act of preserving truth. One line in particular broke every heart that saw it. "He is slipping away and they want me to smile." It captured the unbearable pressure Catherine had endured, the impossible expectation to remain composed while her world was falling apart. The letter was given to William days before Catherine's public statement. He was at Sandringham when he read it, alone, seated in the very place where he had once played as a carefree child. Sources say he didn't move for hours. He didn't speak. Staff brought food that went untouched. When he finally emerged, his face was pale, his expression distant. There were no arguments, no confrontation. Just understanding. And in that moment, something shifted between them. William stopped fighting the palace's plan. He stopped resisting Catherine's instincts. He stepped aside and let her speak, because the letter hadn't just been a revelation of pain, it had been a final request for truth, and yet the royal image had to be preserved, until one unexpected figure stepped forward with a move that shocked everyone. No one saw it coming. After years of distance, scandal, and silence, it was Prince Harry, controversial and estranged, who defied all expectations and made the call that stunned the monarchy. His message was simple: "I know what it's like to be kept in the dark. Tell them." In that moment, old divides blurred, alliances shifted, and the crown trembled. It began with a news alert. Prince Harry, thousands of miles away, watched the media storm around Louis unfold in real time. The headlines, the speculation, the sudden focus on Catherine's movements, it was all painfully familiar. The same system that once turned against him and Meghan was now aimed at his sister-in-law and her child. But what disturbed him wasn't just the coverage, it was the silence. The same silence he had once fought against. The same silence that nearly destroyed him. He didn't go through official channels. He didn't notify palace staff. He picked up the phone and called Catherine directly. The moment was so unexpected, even Catherine hesitated before answering. But when she did, the words came quickly. Harry spoke not as a prince, not as someone with an agenda, but as someone who had lived the pain she now carried. He told her he understood, that he knew what it felt like to be shut out, to be told that silence was loyalty and loyalty was survival. What happened next would remain one of the most private moments in royal history. For 37 minutes, Catherine and Harry spoke without interruption. No staff, no recordings, just two voices reconnecting over shared grief, different in form, identical in impact. Catherine listened. She didn't interrupt. And when Harry said, "You have to tell them. They'll never understand if you don't," something shifted inside her. Back in Montecito, however, the conversation reportedly didn't sit well. Meghan, already at odds with the royal family, is said to have viewed the call as crossing a boundary. Insiders leaked reports of a tense exchange between the couple, one where Meghan reminded Harry why they left in the first place. But for Harry, this wasn't about reconciliation. It was about breaking a cycle. And in Louis's story, he saw a tragedy that mirrored his own in ways he hadn't expected. Catherine would later describe Harry's words as "the push I needed," a phrase that revealed just how close she'd been to staying silent again, just how powerful the palace pressure had been. But now she wasn't alone. Someone on the outside had pulled her forward, not because he wanted revenge, but because he understood what silence cost. The call had other consequences too. For the first time in months, William picked up the phone. No staff, no intermediaries. Just two brothers, hardened by time and fractured by history, speaking again. The conversation didn't fix everything, but it opened a door that had long been closed. With allies forming from unexpected places and resistance mounting within the palace, the next move would not come from Catherine, but from the king himself. Just hours before Catherine's statement was to go public, King Charles made a desperate attempt to stop everything. What he ordered was unprecedented, and some say it crossed a line. The monarch's fear wasn't just about the truth, it was about what that truth would do to the future of the crown. The command was issued in secret. At 2:43 a.m., an encrypted message was sent from the king's private legal team to multiple branches of the royal administration. Its subject line alone raised alarms. Immediate containment protocol, category red. Within it lay one objective: prevent Catherine from releasing her planned public statement. The justification was a claim that she was emotionally compromised and acting outside the institution's interests. In one sweeping move, the palace sought to silence her voice and question her judgment, both as a mother and as a senior royal. Behind the scenes, the legal team scrambled to build a case that Catherine's statement posed a serious threat to the monarchy's reputation. They discussed invoking an obscure rule, unused for nearly 70 years, that allowed the sovereign to suppress internal communications deemed dangerous to the institution's stability. But even the most loyal advisors hesitated. This wasn't policy, this was suppression, and it was happening in real time. Pressure then shifted to William. He was summoned for an emergency briefing, urged by Charles's advisors to use his authority as future king and intervene. The plea was direct. Stop Catherine before the damage becomes permanent. But William, already shaken by Catherine's letter and Harry's call, refused. He is said to have responded with one chilling line: "If this breaks the monarchy, it deserves to break." As tension peaked, one palace staff member, disillusioned and furious, made a move no one expected. They leaked the king's silencing attempt to a senior journalist known for credibility and reach. Within hours, the story exploded. Front pages ran headlines like "Catherine silenced by her own palace" and "Monarchy moves to mute the princess." On social media, outrage erupted. The hashtag #Let Catherine Speak trended worldwide in under 20 minutes. Celebrities, activists, former royals, and even international figures added their voices to the storm. The palace, stunned by the scale of backlash, fumbled for a response. Statements were delayed, then changed, then withheld entirely. The royal press office shut down all calls. Staff canceled appearances. Events were postponed. Within the chaos, Charles vanished, reportedly retreating to Balmoral, citing private reflection. But to insiders, the reason was obvious. The king had lost control of the narrative, and with it, a key grip on his own family. There was no containing it now. The dam had burst. The world wasn't just watching, it was demanding. And Catherine, standing quietly amid the storm, didn't flinch. The institution that once told her silence was duty had now proven its fear of her voice. And she knew, with a mother's clarity, that silence was no longer an option. With the monarchy in chaos and the public demanding truth, Catherine stood at the edge of history, ready to speak not just for her son, but for every mother the institution had ever failed. The screen fades in, no guards, no ceremony, just a mother, a princess, and the sound of a nation holding its breath. In a voice trembling but unwavering, Catherine delivers the most painful truth of her royal life. And with every word, the carefully constructed walls of secrecy begin to crumble. There was no palace backdrop, no ceremonial dress, no royal insignia to shield her from the rawness of the moment. This was not the Princess of Wales delivering a prepared message. This was Catherine, stripped of title and protocol, speaking as the mother of a child who had been hidden, protected, and silenced for far too long. She began simply, calmly, but the weight in her voice made every word feel powerful. She confirmed what millions had feared and suspected. Prince Louis had been diagnosed with a rare neurological disorder, one that had quietly reshaped every corner of their lives. Catherine described it not in medical terms, but in human ones. The sleepless nights, the missed milestones, the silent prayers. She spoke of the fear, the denial, and the slow, painful realization that their family's future would never look like what they had once imagined. But the most heartbreaking revelations weren't about the diagnosis. They were about the silence. Catherine admitted to having been told to keep quiet, that for the sake of image, tradition, and the crown's stability, Louis's truth was to remain behind closed doors. She spoke of internal meetings where her concerns were brushed aside, where every tear was met with a hollow reminder of duty. The gap between her heart and the institution widened with every passing month, and in that gap, she lost not only her voice, but a part of herself. She didn't name names. She didn't assign blame. But her message was unmistakable. The system that had sworn to protect had instead isolated and suppressed, and it was time for a reckoning. Catherine called upon the institution to put compassion over protocol, especially when it came to royal children. She spoke not just for Louis, but for every young person born into a life they didn't choose. Children who, like her son, would carry the weight of expectation before they could even speak. And then came the line that silenced the world. He is still our joy, and I will never let him face this alone. With those words, she shattered the illusion of royal detachment. She reminded the world that behind the palace gates stood a mother willing to risk everything for the dignity of her child. In under 12 minutes, Catherine didn't just address a nation, she shifted it. The response was instantaneous. The internet flooded with messages of support. News channels paused programming to replay the full address. Across the country and beyond, people lit candles, held vigils, and openly wept for a boy they had barely seen, but now felt deeply connected to. This wasn't a broadcast. It was a breaking point, a rupture in the monarchy's carefully controlled narrative, and the aftershocks had only just begun. But while the nation wept, one room in the palace remained eerily silent, and what came next could change everything for the future of the monarchy. In the wake of Catherine's speech, royal advisors gathered in hushed tones, faces pale and futures uncertain. King Charles faced the most critical decision of his reign. What he did next would determine not only the monarchy's future, but whether it could survive at all. The palace had weathered scandals before, but never one like this. Born from within, carried not by enemies or outsiders, but by the very woman who had once been praised as the crown's quiet strength. Catherine's revelation had triggered a national reckoning. Overnight, faith in the monarchy dropped. Loyalty, once taken for granted, turned into pointed questions. Why had this truth been hidden? Why had the institution demanded silence from a mother standing beside her suffering child? Inside royal walls, the atmosphere was one of fracture and fear. Senior advisors reportedly urged King Charles to issue a statement. Some urged defiance. Others urged humility. But Charles, deeply shaken, withdrew from immediate public view. According to sources close to the palace, the monarch considered a temporary step back from duties, citing the need to reflect on the path forward. It was an unprecedented gesture from a sovereign so early in his reign, and one that revealed just how rattled the crown had become. Meanwhile, William and Catherine made their own choice. They declined all scheduled appearances, no tours, no ceremonies, no formal engagements. It was not a protest, it was a pause, a refusal to continue the performance while the world processed what had just been laid bare. The absence of the future king and queen was felt not just across the United Kingdom, but around the world. Yet far from sparking backlash, their decision was met with empathy and support. Behind the scenes, conversations began, uncomfortable ones. The palace started to quietly review the expectations placed upon royal children. No more forced appearances, no more scripted interactions. Talks of redefining the roles of minors within the monarchy gained momentum. Advisors discussed proposals that would reshape decades of tradition, including options that would remove children from royal duties altogether until they reach adulthood. Outside the palace, Parliament entered the conversation. A heated debate broke out over the funding of the monarchy, particularly in light of what many now saw as a publicly funded institution that had turned inward and secretive. Calls for increased transparency in royal operations grew louder. The monarchy, once immune to such scrutiny, now found itself under the microscope. But amid the uncertainty, one thing became clear. Catherine's popularity had soared. What had once been admiration became something deeper, reverence. She was dubbed the People's Queen by headlines and citizens alike, not for her titles, but for her courage. Her refusal to stay silent had won hearts across every class and continent. Even longtime critics of the monarchy acknowledged the bravery in her stand. Speculation intensified around the possibility of early succession. Would Charles step aside? Would William ascend earlier than planned, with Catherine by his side, not just as consort, but as a symbol of reform? The palace remained silent on such matters, but whispers only grew louder. The monarchy was no longer operating on its own timeline. Public sentiment had shifted, and it wasn't waiting for permission.